Imagine you're stepping up to the starting line of a 100-meter sprint. You've trained for months, your mechanics are flawless, and you are just entirely ready to execute.
Right.
But right before the starting gun fires, you voluntarily take two large steps backward.
Yeah, which is crazy.
It is. You're deliberately gifting your opponent a structural advantage in a contest where, victory is routinely decided by fractions of a second.
Something's of a second, exactly.
It sounds like madness, but in high-stakes environments, teams do this to themselves all the time. Welcome to today's deep dive. Today is March 31st, 2026, and we are unpacking Match 4 of the IPL 2026 season.
That's the Gujarat Titans and the Punjab Kings in New Chandigarh.
Exactly. And we have a massive stack of sources on the table for you today. We're pulling from granular innings reports, advanced pressure metrics like Critechery and Humdinger scores, and these incredibly detailed Black Mirror counterfactual models.
Oh, those are my favorite. The ones that simulate alternate realities of the game.
Yes, the what-ifs. And why should you, listening to this, care? Well, I'll let the expert explain.
Right. So we're digging into this specific match because it serves as a masterclass in structural integrity. I mean, you don't need to know the first thing about cricket to see how this game perfectly illustrates a universal truth.
Would you?
Small, seemingly isolated, unforced errors can trigger catastrophic systemic collapses. But inversely, it also shows how a single point of individual brilliance, like one person refusing to conform to the statistical model, can completely shatter mathematical probability.
It's wild. We are going to expose the underlying mechanics of pressure, tactical stubbornness, and risk management today.
Let's get into it.
Okay, let's unpack this. The Gujarat Titans are batting first, and they end up posting a total of 162 for 6 in their 20 overs. On the surface, if you're just glancing at the scoreboard, that looks like a standard middle-of-the-road T20 innings, right?
Yeah, it looks totally average.
Yeah.
But the internal mechanics of how they got to that number are wildly uneven.
Very uneven. Sai Sudarshan and Shubman Gill came out to open the batting, and they were absolutely explosive. I mean, they put up 37 runs in just 20 balls.
Which is a blistering strike rate of 185.9.
Yeah, 185. They had the Punjab Kings completely on the back foot, and then the engine just stalled.
It completely stalled. The turning point for that momentum shift is a brilliant case study in tactical bowling prevailing over sheer physical pace. The data points us straight to Shubman Gill's dismissal.
We went over 9.3, right?
Exactly, over 9.3. Yuzvendra Chahal is bowling, and he doesn't try to overpower Gill. He outthinks him. Chahal bowls with extra flight. He loops the ball high into the air, aiming to drop it perfectly on the middle stump.
And that loop is a psychological weapon.
It is. It forces the batter to commit to their shot just a fraction of a second earlier than they normally would.
And Gill decides to go for a slog sweep. For anyone trying to visualize this, a slog sweep is like a high-risk, high-reward shot where the batter drops down onto one knee and tries to launch the ball powerfully into the air over the leg side.
Yeah, it requires a massive swing of the bat.
Right.
Precisely. But because of Chahal's flight, the ball dips sharply at the last possible millisecond. Gill is suddenly cramped for ream. The entire biomechanical foundation of his shot is completely compromised.
Oh, wow.
He can't extend his arms to get the proper leverage, so he doesn't make clean contact. The ball goes high, but not far, and he's caught right at the deep mid-wicket boundary by Cooper Connolly.
Keep that name in mind, by the way, for later. Cooper Connolly is going to become the central figure of our story very shortly. But after Gill falls to that trap, the Titans' batting order just grinds into this really slow, agonizing gear.
Yeah, their middle orders simply could not find any rhythm whatsoever.
Washington Sundar and Shahrukh Khan barely moved the needle, and the team posted a weighted strike rate of just 122.3. That metric is crucial, right? Because a weighted strike rate adjusts for the specific match situation and pitch conditions.
Right. It tells us they weren't just scoring slowly. They were scoring slowly relative to the baseline expectation for that exact scenario. Nobody in the entire lineup managed to score a half-century.
A massive portion of the credit for that restriction belongs to the Punjab Kings bowler, Vijay Kumar Vishak.
Oh, absolutely. He operated brilliantly during the death overs, the final few overs of the innings where batters typically score the fastest. Vishak took 3 wickets for 34 runs.
But the standout moment was that devastating off-cutter.
The one that shattered Washington Sundar's stumps, yeah. For context, an off-cutter is a delivery from a fast bowler where they drag their fingers down the side of the ball, forcing it to grip the pitch and sharply change direction toward the batter.
Much like a spinner's delivery, but at a much higher speed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sundar entirely misread the pace and the movement. Vishek's execution essentially locked down the innings, preventing the Titans from pushing past that critical psychological barrier of 175 runs.
So the Titans are held to 162. A victory for the Punjab Kings bowling attack, right? Well, not exactly. Let's talk about that 100-meter sprint analogy I brought up at the start.
Here we go.
The Punjab Kings committed a massive structural unforced error in the field, and it fundamentally altered the math of the entire match. Our sources call it the Arshdeep problem.
Yeah, Arshdeep Singh bowled his allotted 4 overs and conceded 42 runs. But the sheer volume of runs isn't the scandal here. It's the composition of those runs.
Right. He bowled 11 wides and 1 no ball. The PBKS's Critechery Discipline Score, which is this metric out of 10 designed specifically to measure how well a team limits unforced errors, was 0.0.
Not a low score. A flat mathematical 0.
A 0. I look at this through the lens of a business transaction. Giving away 14 runs through wides and no balls is like paying a massive unforced tax before you even sit down at the negotiating table.
That's a great way to put it.
In a tight, high-stakes environment where margins are razor thin, isn't gifting your opponent 14 free runs mathematically disastrous for a team's structural integrity?
Oh, completely disastrous. When you look at the physiological and psychological toll of that indiscipline, it is staggering. 12 extra deliveries mean the fielding team has to endure 2 entire extra overs of work.
Right.
That is 12 additional high-intensity sprints for the fast bowler. It is 12 extra times the outfielders have to reposition themselves in the heat, hyper-focused, draining their cognitive and physical reserves.
And the batters don't have to play high-risk, aggressive shots to get those runs. They just get to stand there and watch the scoreboard tick up.
It creates a systemic liability that ripples through the rest of the game. By subsidizing the opponent's total, you are actively lowering the required run rate they need to achieve while simultaneously forcing your own batters to take on disproportionately higher risks later in the match to make up for those unearned runs.
You're artificially inflating the pressure on your own teammates.
Exactly.
Let's see how that artificially inflated pressure impacted the Punjab Kings' run chase. They needed 163 to win, and they seemingly decided to respond to this target using nothing but sheer brute force.
Yeah, extreme power dependency.
They hit 14 sixes in a 165-run total. That gives them a staggering ratio of 1/6 every 11.8 runs. Prabhsimran Singh was the architect of this initial assault. He smashed 37 off 24 balls, launching 4 massive sixes, mostly targeting the leg side.
And he and Connolly put together a 76-run partnership that dragged PBKS's statistical win probability from a shaky 40% all the way up to a commanding 75%.
But the Gujarat Titans recognized how entirely dependent the Punjab Kings were on that boundary power. Prabhsimran was generating all of his momentum through the air, so the Titans' star spinner, Rashid Khan, steps in.
And what's fascinating here is Rashid executed a brilliant pre-planned tactical chokehold. Rashid deliberately removed his fielders from the leg side.
Right, he opens up a massive inviting gap in the exact area where Prabhsimran wanted to hit the ball.
He was essentially daring the batter to take the shot.
It's a psychological trap. You see an open field and your brain screams at you to exploit it, right? Overriding your baseline caution.
And Rashid capitalized on that instinct perfectly by bowling a googly. For those of you who don't spend your weekends dissecting spin bowling, a googly is a deceptive delivery that looks like it's going to spin away from the batter, but upon bouncing, it bites into the pitch and cuts sharply in the exact opposite direction.
Sneaky.
Very. The ball landed in a zone where Prabhsimran had to either awkwardly defend it or risk a badly mistimed slog into the air. Prabhsimran took the bait.
And the trap worked so well that he only managed 4 runs off 8 balls against Rashid.
Yeah, dropping his strike rate in that matchup to 50.
Which is a stark contrast to his seasonal average of over 154. Shortly after, the pressure broke him and he was dismissed. Here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
I look at the structural vulnerability of the Punjab Kings strategy here. I see a team generating almost all of their momentum from boundaries. Our sources highlight this absurd 2.3 to 1 ratio of 6s to 4s.
Yeah, a crazy ratio.
Aren't they just a classic glass cannon? Power is fantastic when it works, but a cannon made of glass shatters the moment it takes a direct hit. When a genius bowler like Rashid Khan successfully neutralizes those high-flying aerial shots, won't their entire foundation crack because they haven't built a mechanism for rotating the strike?
You mean just picking up quiet singles and doubles to keep the scoreboard moving?
Exactly.
A glass cannon is the perfect diagnostic term. When your scoring engine requires maximum risk shots to function, you are reliant on flawless execution. You've built a machine with no shock absorbers.
Right.
When the aerial road is cut off, the pressure doesn't just build, it compounds instantly. And the moment Prabh Simran was removed from the equation, we saw that glass cannon shatter into dust. We entered what the innings analysts call the collapse window between overs 12 and 15.
It was an absolute bloodbath out there. I mean, PBKS lost 5 wickets in the span of 27 balls.
Unbelievable.
Prasidh Krishna came in and bowled a spell that will be studied for a long time. He takes 3 wickets in just 14 deliveries. Shreyas Iyer falls. Shashank Singh falls. Marcus Stoinis falls. At one point, the partnership between Shashank and Stoinis produced 0 runs in 6 consecutive balls.
The tension must have been physically suffocating.
Suffocating. And that brings us to the ultimate inflection point of the match at over 15.2. Stoinis attempts to play a delicate ramp shot, trying to flick the ball over the wicketkeeper, and sends it straight to Rashid Khan.
Right.
PBKS goes from cruising to a dismal 118 for 6. Their win probability plummets from nearly 55% down to 27.5% in the blink of an eye.
To quantify the severity of this collapse, we turn to the Humdinger Score and the Volatility Index. The Humdinger Score for this match registered at 6.8 out of 10.
Which is pretty specific. What does the 6.8 tell us?
Well, a score of 9.0 or higher indicates sustained, agonizing tension that stretches across the entire match. A 6.8 tells us that the drama was intensely concentrated into a very small window of time. The Volatility Index sits at 0.463, which maps out a U-shaped match.
A U-shaped match.
Yeah, PBKS was operating at a high altitude, then experienced a sheer cliff face drop, and then had to somehow mount a near vertical recovery.
So what does this all mean? Think about a major project you're managing right now. Everything looks completely stable. Your team has high confidence. You're hitting all your milestones, and the stakeholders are thrilled.
Right, smooth sailing.
And then, out of nowhere, a 27-minute panic completely wipes out months of work. The bottom just falls out of your operation. That is what this win probability chart looks like. It is a sudden stock market flash crash.
And during that 27-ball flash crash, the players in the middle were subjected to extreme psychological gravity. The Advanced Pressure Index formula weights dot balls deliveries where no runs are scored at 40%, wickets at 30%, and run rate deviation at 30%.
And overs 12 through 15 were just glowing dark red as extreme pressure hotspots.
The batters were being suffocated by dot balls, wickets were falling in clusters, and the required run rate was artificially climbing higher and higher with every missed opportunity.
In a financial flash crash, the only thing that saves the market from total ruin is a massive, unexpected influx of external capital, right? A bailout.
A bailout, yeah.
For the Punjab Kings, that bailout arrived in the form of Cooper Connolly. We call this the outlier rescue. Connolly was standing at the non-striker's end, helplessly watching this panic sell-off destroy his team. And from 118 for 6, this guy launches a counterattack that completely defies logic.
It really does.
He finishes 72 not out off 44 balls. Let me put his dominance into perspective. Out of the final 47 runs PBKS scored to win the match, Connolly personally scored 54 of them.
I know that sounds like a mathematical impossibility to our listeners, but it factors in the extras conceded by the bowlers and how Connolly masterfully farmed the strike.
Meaning he made sure he faced almost every single delivery to protect the weaker batters at the other end.
Exactly. He put the entire weight of the franchise on his shoulders.
He essentially hijacked the game.
He did. And he accomplished it by winning the single most crucial matchup of the night. Connolly versus Prasidh Krishna. Keep in mind, Pressy was the architect of the collapse. He had just carved through the middle order. But against Connolly, Prasidh was taken apart, conceding 18 runs off 10 balls. That is a strike rate of 180.
Wow.
Prasidh was bowling a very full length, pitching the ball right up to the batter in hopes of swinging it back into the stumps. That exact tactic worked beautifully against Iyer and Stoinis. But against Connolly, who has a different stance and bat swing, that fuller length sat perfectly in his natural driving zone. He punished it.
Now, I have to push back on the post-match analytics here. I was reading through the commentary, and so many analysts criticized Prasidh Krishna for tactical stubbornness.
Yeah, I saw that too.
They point to the spreadsheet and say, look at the data. Bowling that fuller length to Connolly was an obvious error. It cost them the match. But put yourself in his shoes for a second. He had just taken 3 wickets in 14 balls using that exact same delivery. It's the hot hand phenomenon. Can we really sit here in a comfortable studio and blame an elite athlete for trusting the very weapon that got his team back into the game in the first place?
This raises an important question, actually, and it cuts to the core of the debate between data analytics and human execution. The line between being tactically stubborn and executing a match-winning strategy is often decided by mere millimeters.
Exactly.
You're entirely justified in defending his mindset. Prasid felt the rhythm. He had his release point dialed in perfectly, and the ball was doing exactly what he commanded. The physical margin between a genius piece of bowling that catches the edge of the bat and a terrible delivery that gets driven down the ground for 4 runs is practically invisible to the naked eye.
It's so thin.
If the ball swings just a fraction of a degree more, it takes Connolly's edge, and Prasid is universally hailed as the undisputed hero.
That invisible margin of error is exactly what makes the Black Mirror counterfactual models in our source stack so compelling. They allow us to take the actual match data, tweak one single variable, and watch how an entirely alternate reality unfolds.
Let's do it.
Let's look at scenario 1. What happens if Arshdeep Singh doesn't bowl those 11 wides?
If Arshdeep is just ordinarily economical and limits those unforced errors, the model shows that PBKS would only be chasing 149 instead of 163.
So the math of the entire chase changes. I'd imagine that knowing you need fewer runs completely diffuses the panic during the middle overs.
Spot on. In that alternate reality, the infamous 27-ball collapse from overs 12 to 15 doesn't trigger a crisis. PBKS chases down the smaller target comfortably, winning by 6 wickets. The pressure never reaches that boiling point.
Wow.
And most importantly, Cooper Connolly never has the opportunity to become a superhero. He probably finishes the game with a quiet, respectable 30-odd runs, and his performance barely registers in the post-match analysis.
That is wild. Arshdeep's 11 bad deliveries actively engineered the environment that birthed Connolly's heroics.
Yeah.
What about scenario 2? We were just debating Prasid Krishna's full delivery to Connolly. What if that delivery actually worked?
If Prasid gets Connolly to edge the ball at over 15.3, the simulation shows PBKS dropping to a hopeless 118 for 7. Without Connolly's violent counterattack to absorb the pressure, the tail-end batters are exposed to Rashid Khan.
Oh, that's game over.
Right. They can't maintain the required run rate, which quickly climbs over 10 runs per over. The Gujarat Titans win the match by 12 runs. Prasid Krishna takes 4 wickets and is crowned player of the match.
And Connolly.
In that universe, he's remembered as a batter who got a promising start of 38 runs, but ultimately failed to finish the job. 1 edge, 1 millimeter of swing separates a catastrophic failure from a legendary rescue.
It's genuinely mind-bending to realize that the grand narrative of a sports match, who's the hero, who's the GOAT, is entirely outcome-dependent, even though the physical processes leading up to that outcome are practically identical in both realities.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the broader implications for the IPL 2026 season, this single match functions as a brutal diagnostic report for both franchises. For the Punjab Kings, their extreme dependency on boundary hitting exposes a severe structural brittleness in their middle order.
Yeah, big time.
You cannot rely on a 21-year-old outlier to systematically dismantle the opponent and rescue you from a 5-wicket collapse every week.
The glass cannon will eventually shatter permanently, and you won't have the pieces to put it back together.
And for the Gujarat Titans, they clearly possess an elite, match-winning bowling attack. But gifting your opponent 14 extra runs in a tightly contested chase is a fatal flaw. A team will not survive deep into a grueling tournament if their structural discipline is that porous.
The Critechery scores back that up, too.
They do. It's highly revealing that both teams recorded Critechery scores 59.2 for GT and 61.2 for PBKS that sit noticeably below the season average of 65 to 70.
So it wasn't a perfect game.
Not at all. This wasn't a clash of 2 flawless, invincible titans. It was a game of controlled mediocrity, completely upended and ultimately saved by 2 brilliant statistical anomalies in Prasid and Connolly.
And that brings this entire deep dive right back to you listening to this. Because the mechanics we've unpacked today, glass cannons, structural flaws, paying unforced taxes, they don't just apply to a cricket pitch in New Chandigarh.
No, they don't.
They apply to the projects you run, the teams you manage, and the systems you build. A structural flaw, like gifting an opponent 11 free wides, fundamentally alters the pressure and the trajectory of your entire operation. It forces everyone else inside your system to take on extreme uncomfortable risks just to break even.
It serves as a powerful reminder that maintaining rigorous discipline in the mundane, everyday tasks creates the vital buffer you need to survive those inevitable high-pressure flash crashes.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up today, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to chew on. We spent an enormous amount of time dissecting Cooper Connolly's miraculous 72 runs with the bat. But cast your mind back to the very first innings of the match.
Oh, right.
Connolly was the fielder standing on the deep mid-wicket boundary who took that crucial high-pressure catch to dismiss Shubman Gill. He perfectly executed a massive moment in the field long before he ever picked up his bat. You have to wonder, does perfectly executing a high-pressure fielding moment subtly alter a player's psychological momentum before they even pick up a bat?
That's a fascinating angle on the psychology of momentum.
Does the sensory feedback of the ball sticking perfectly in your hands rewire your internal confidence, secretly priming your brain for the impossible rescue mission you don't even know you're about to lead? It's something for you to ponder as you look at how different phases of performance, whether in sports or in your own life, secretly feed into one another.
The mind and the moment are always deeply connected.
They truly are. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the analytics, the pressure cookers, and the sheer chaos of Match 4. Keep your eye on those invisible margins, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.